Have you ever wondered how we make mistakes in our thinking? In this video, I'm going to break down a speech that was originally delivered by the famous investor Charlie Munger in 1995, and this was at Harvard University. The psychology of misjudgment is really about how we make thinking errors, so mistakes in our thinking, and it's super important to us as investors because we're all the time thinking and analyzing information. Now, Charlie has given us 25 of these thinking errors to consider, but I've picked 5 that I really loved and that are very practical in terms of applying these concepts to our investing endeavors. Okay, let me start with the first misjudgment that we make in our thinking, and it's called excessive self-regard tendency. This is about people's tendency to think very highly of themselves. They usually think that they are better than they actually are. Now, Munger provides us a couple of examples to make sense of this misjudgment. One is that as humans, we often over-appraise our close ones. So, for example, if you're married, you likely are to think that your spouse is better than they actually objectively are. Or as kids, if they play sports, for example, they might not be a great cricket player, but as a parent, you're going to overestimate how good they are in terms of their cricketing abilities. Now, why is this important for us as investors, and what's the big deal? Well, this also impacts our decision making. Once we have made a decision, we often think that it's better than what it actually is objectively. And Munger quotes, and all man's decisions are suddenly regarded by him as better than would have been the case just before he made them. So in investing, we're making decisions all the time. Once we've made them, we might have made a mistake. And how do we catch ourselves with this tendency? Just because we've bought into something, it doesn't mean that it's a good decision. Hopefully it's a good decision, but we have to be objective when evaluating our decision, especially after we've made them. Now, the next standard way in which we make thinking errors is even more brilliant. Have you ever come up with the thought that I will just follow what a famous investor is doing? Munger says that human society is organized in dominance hierarchies, which means we simply tend to follow the leader. If you work in an organization, think about what happens when a senior leader walks into a room. How do others behave? And when they bring up an idea, how do others respond? In my work as an organizational psychologist, I often see this. Where people tend to just fall in line with what the leader says. This is because man, Charlie Munger says, is mostly born to follow leaders with few people doing the leading. The problem with this tendency is that we can make a lot of mistakes if the leader is wrong. And so if we simply follow the leader like Warren Buffett in our investing decisions, we might end up losing money too. Let me move to the third thinking error, which is called the reciprocation tendency. This is the automatic tendency to reciprocate both favors and disfavors. Now, you might be wondering why I use the word automatic. A lot of these tendencies happen often at a subconscious level. So we are not even aware that this is how we're making these thinking errors because they are part of our subconscious mind. Let's have some fun with this tendency called reciprocation tendency. Next time you are at a McDonald's or some other place and you're sharing food, go ahead and offer your fries to your friend or your friends and see what happens. Oftentimes, they will immediately offer you their food. And so this is how this tendency plays out. So understanding this tendency can be useful in a couple of important ways. First, when you're aware of this tendency, it helps you in negotiating and also building relationships. So when you offer something of value first, people are more likely to feel indebted and respond positively. The flip side of this is also avoiding being manipulated. So building in systems and processes so that this tendency is minimized. Charlie Munger uses the example of Sam Walton, who was the founder of Walmart. And he had a rule where purchasing agents in the company were not allowed to accept even a small gift, something like even as small as a hot dog. So let's apply that to our context, especially in India and within the real estate world. So often I see builders will invite us to their launch parties. And what could happen is that free lunch or that free box of dry fruits that you got, subconsciously it may influence you to make a decision faster than if you hadn't accepted those gifts. Let's say you saw a house that you liked, but you're not sure. If you didn't accept those gifts, you might actually be more comfortable to take the time you need to come to a thoughtful decision. The fourth tendency that I want to cover is called pain-avoiding psychological denial. This one is a lot simpler, but when reality is too painful, we often can simply deny it, right? Let's say a loved one has a serious health diagnosis. We're not able to accept that reality. We simply deny it. It's kind of like an ostrich putting its head in the sand and hoping that the bad news just goes away. Now, in investing, this is super important because sometimes we will, and we often will make mistakes. This is a hard game, especially picking stocks. You know, if the fundamentals of the company are solid and the price goes down, you're good. But sometimes you might genuinely have made a critical error. And in that case, psychological denial can prevent you from accepting that you made a poor investing decision. Now, the last thinking error I want to cover is called social proof tendency. This is when we look to others to decide what to do, especially in uncertain situations. Munger talks about psychology professors who have fun with this tendency. This is because the experiments they do often result in ridiculous results. For example, if a professor arranges for some stranger to enter an elevator where 10 compliance practitioners, basically 10 people who are part of the experiment, are all silently standing so that they face the back of the elevator, the stranger will often turn around and do the same. So this tendency, of course, leads to herd behavior in markets. People often follow the crowd, investing in the highs of the high and then selling off in lows. Basically, they just follow the crowd instead of making independent choices. So why are these tendencies so important? So as investors, being aware of these tendencies and putting them into practice helps us to think more clearly, and therefore it helps us to make better investing decisions. Out of the 5 that I shared, just go ahead and reflect which ones are the ones that you are more prone to. I'd love to know in the comments, and if you have any other questions, again, please comment, and I'd love to have a dialogue around this. I hope you found value in this video. If you do, please hit the like button so that others can also learn from this knowledge. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to my channel. It goes a long way in supporting my work. Thanks so much. I will see you next time.